Hey there, and welcome. Today we're going to jump into one of the coolest ideas in all of biology, what it really means to be a complex, living thing. We're going to look at the tiny building blocks that make you, well, you. And we're going to see how the very same rules apply to a creature you've definitely seen wiggling around in your garden, the earthworm. I know, it sounds like a weird question, right? But believe me, the answer is pretty amazing. You're both made of millions, or even trillions, of tiny cells that all have to work together like one big team. So, what secrets of life do you and a simple worm actually share? Let's find out. So here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll look at how our bodies are put together, kind of like building with Legos. Then we'll see how different cells get special jobs to do. After that, we'll meet our co-star, the earthworm, and see how it compares to us. And finally, we'll figure out why being a team of cells is such a great strategy for life. Okay, let's start with the big picture. I want you to imagine your body is like a giant, super busy city. Every single part, from the smallest little worker to the biggest skyscraper, has a special role to play to keep that whole city running smoothly. Well, life is organized in almost the exact same way. The big word for today is multicellular. It sounds complicated, but it just means made of many cells. But here's the really important part. It's not just a big random pile of cells. In a multicellular organism, different cells have different jobs. We call this a division of labor. Think about it. In a city, you don't have just one person doing everything, right? You have builders, messengers, and people running the power plants. It's the same in your body. So, how does life build itself up from scratch? Well, it all starts with one thing, the cell. The cell is the basic building block of life. Now, when a bunch of cells that do the same job get together, they form a tissue. Then, when different kinds of tissues team up, they create an organ, like your heart or your brain. A group of organs that have a big job to do, like your digestive system, is called a system. And when you put all of those systems together, boom, you get a complete living organism, like you. Let's just zoom in on that second step for a second. Tissues. A tissue is simply a team of cells that are all alike, all working on the same task. In humans, we've got four main types. We have muscle tissue for moving, nervous tissue for sending messages, connective tissue, like your bones, for support, and epithelial tissue, like your skin, which covers and protects everything. Okay, so we know we have different cells for different jobs, but how does a cell get so good at its specific job? Well, the secret is in its shape and the tools it has inside. This is a huge rule in biology, so remember this one. A cell's structure, its shape, is perfectly suited for its function, its job. Let's look at a few examples. Check out your skin cells. They are flat and packed together really tightly, kind of like bricks in a wall. And why is that? Well, their job is to be a shield, a protective barrier between you and the outside world. This flat shape is absolutely perfect for covering a huge area without leaving any gaps. Simple, but brilliant. Now let's look at muscle cells. Their job is all about movement, which really means pulling things. So what do they look like? They're long and thin, almost like little ropes. They bundle together, and when they contract, or get shorter, they pull on your bones and make you move. And since moving takes a ton of energy, these cells are stuffed full of tiny power plants called mitochondria, which are constantly making fuel for the cell. And what about nerve cells? These are the messengers. Their job is communication, sending a signal from your brain all the way down to your big toe in a fraction of a second. To do that, they have these super long, thin branches, kind of like telephone wires. Their shape is perfect for carrying signals really fast over really long distances. They're the body's high-speed internet. All right, we've seen how our own cells are total pros at their jobs. Now let's meet the other star of our show, the earthworm. An earthworm is an invertebrate, which just means it doesn't have a backbone. But it uses the exact same idea of teamwork, just with a completely different body design. So, get this. Earthworms don't have lungs. Not at all. So how in the world do they breathe? They breathe right through their skin. Their entire body surface acts like one big lung. Pretty wild, right? This works because of a process called diffusion. All diffusion means is that things naturally move from a place where there's a lot of them to a place where there's less of them. You know, from a crowded area to a less crowded area. There's way more oxygen in the air than inside the worm's body, so oxygen just naturally moves, or diffuses, right into the worm through its skin. But, and this is super important, this only works if the worm's skin stays wet. If it dries out, the worm can't breathe. And that actually explains something you've probably seen.
Ever notice how after a big rain, there are worms all over the sidewalk? Why do they do that? Well, when the ground gets soaked with water, all the little air pockets in the soil fill up. There's not enough oxygen for them down there, so they have to come up to the surface where they can breathe much more easily.
The worm's digestive system is another fantastic example of teamwork. Food goes in the mouth and gets stored for a little while in an organ called the crop. Then it moves to the gizzard, which is like a strong muscular stomach that grinds the food into a paste. And finally, in the intestine, all the good stuff, the nutrients, are absorbed into the blood to be delivered all around its body.
Okay, it's time for the main event. Let's put humans and earthworms side by side. What you're about to see is that we both have to solve the same basic problems of life, like moving around, breathing, and eating, but we've come up with totally different ways to get the job done.
Just look at this chart. For support, we have a skeleton made of bones inside our bodies. A worm uses what's called a hydrostatic skeleton. It's basically a tube full of fluid that its muscles squeeze to move. To breathe, we use lungs. The worm uses its whole skin. We both move blood around in closed systems, but we have one big, powerful heart, while a worm has a few smaller, simpler ones. See? Same goals, different designs.
So, we've seen all this specialization, all this incredible teamwork, but why? What's the point? What's the big advantage of being multicellular? Why is it so much better than just being a single cell trying to do everything by itself?
Well, there are some huge advantages. First, that division of labor we talked about. When cells specialize, they get really good at their one job, which makes the whole organism work much better. Second, it lets you get bigger and more complex. Being big means you're less likely to be somebody's lunch, and having complex systems allows for things like running fast. And finally, and this one is maybe the most important, is homeostasis. That's just the ability for all your systems to work together to keep everything inside your body stable and balanced. You know, keeping everything just right.
So let's bring it all the way back to our city idea. We've seen all the different workers in all the different departments, the skin cells building the walls, the nerve cells sending the messages. But if your body really is a city made of trillions of tiny living citizens, what do you think is its single most important job? What's the one mission that every single cell is working towards all day, every day, just to keep you going?